welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. We are getting ready to talk about love and marriage because you can't have one without the other. That's right. We're talking about Married with Children. If you watched our, I almost said Schitt's Creek. I don't know where that came from. But if you watched our New Girl live stream last weekend, you will recall towards the end when I was saying that this was going to be our next live stream, and my panelists all started mouthing the words to love and marriage, and I had no idea what they were doing, and they're like, we're mouthing the words to love and marriage. So that's what we're talking about is Married with Children. And it's the wild women of podcasting, a term that Jen, my podcasting brain twin, coined back when we were doing our Dexter live tweets and live streams that I miss so much. I still have the reminder on my calendar and it comes up every Thursday night and I get a little sad. You'd think I'd delete it, but for some reason, the nostalgia of it won't let me. So sometime soon, this is a reunion of us, but sometime soon we're going to do one of those impromptu live streams. I'm not sure when, not sure what we'll talk about, but it'll be fun because I love being with Carla and Jen on our live streams. We have so much fun. We're so completely professional, never goofy, never ridiculous. And I'm sure talking about Married with Children will be completely serious, not goofy at all. I'm positive of it. But before we dive into Married with Children, I'm going to go around and ask my lovely panelists what they're into right now in pop culture. So, Carla, what are you into right now?
I am currently into, wait for it, nothing. Because
What?
because I haven't had time to do very much besides watch Married with Children. And the only thing that comes close to it really has been that my son has taken over um my music players, all of them, and has put his favorites on there. And there's a really great song that he loves. It's by Garifuna group of people, and it's beautiful. I don't remember the name of it though. I don't remember who sings it. I could probably look it up. But anyway, so like that's and so the reason that I will say that I'm into that is because he won't stop playing it, and not saying that I wish he would. Partly because like I'm the one who played it for him first, and then he was like, "That is my song." It's okay. So it's by the Garifuna Collective, and it's called Mon Gulu, and it's really good. It's really good. Like if you find it, it's really worth checking out. Or in my case, worth checking out for every time that you're in the car with your child, every time you're having a meal with your child, every time your child is bathing.
Every time you're near your child.
hmm Anytime your child's
Yes.
awake.
Yeah.
Yes. Is he awake? He's playing that song.
Awesome. And and Jen, are you into nothing but also a song that your children are listening to?
Oddly enough, I do have a very similar story and kind of recent experience as Carla. My kids recently finished watching on Netflix Centaur World, and that show is just it's weird, but it's kind of sweet and cute and funny, but it's a musical, and so there's all these songs throughout, and they're all just kind of funny or whatever, and there's one that's called, Becky Apples. I'm not even gonna try and explain, like, the plot of the show, but it's animated, and they're, in another world called Centaur World, and everything is like a human animal mix, for better or worse, and then they all have magic. But there's a handful of songs that the kids will not stop playing. They are catchy as fuck, and they're only, like, a couple minutes, they're not song average song length. So, that's what is always playing when my kids are awake and nearby. Other than that, when I'm not doing the pod prep, I just kinda can't stop watching Star Trek Next Generation on Pluto. So, anytime I'm not pod prepping, because it's also like I can have it on when the kids are around too. And I'm starting to wear them down where I think the oldest is starting to like Next Generation, But he really wants to watch the new one that's out on that just started, Strange New Worlds, because we keep seeing commercials for it. So I'm like, "Ugh, we'll sign up for it later." So that's it.
Okay. Well, the streak has been broken, ladies and gentlemen.
No. No, I'm gonna throw it in there just because we can't.
It's been broken. Sorry,
No.
it's been broken. It's broken.
The streak? Wait, what?
It's been broken.
Flag means death being mentioned every week. It's been
Oh,
broken. I retroactively state our flag.
Because
means
we
death.
already
Because
recorded
my
How I
mom
Met Your
finished
Mother.
watching it this week, and she's upset that it hasn't been renewed. So there we go.
I'm like, should I mention this? Because then Carla will mention it. But I decided to do it anyway.
I really didn't ask my mom, but my mom's thing that she's into in pop culture this week is her flag means death. Because she's on the panel. Yolanda, what are you into this week? Well, this week I'm into Our Flag Means Death. And I just finished. And it has not been renewed. And I don't understand why. Mamá, ya te expliqué que luego lo reúno, pero todo. Espérate, ten paciencia. Es que no tengo paciencia. Quiero que lo hagan reunido ya. Te entiendo, pero cálmate. Sorry, I had to tell her to just, chill.
Thank you for stopping by, Carla's mom.
yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure all the viewers were totally full too. Like, totally bought it.
Yeah. Well, the listeners will, because the
Yes.
listeners won't know.
And that sounded nothing like me, so.
It didn't. Yes. Or Christian Bale. Yes. Your impressions are top tier, man. Well, what I'm into is, there's nothing really new, but I am going to mention, just so that I can plug our Patreon, I am rewatching American Horror Story Freak Show. I'm not going to say the AHS. And there, I said it right that time. Because usually I stumble over that for some reason. But I'm watching Freak Show in preparation. We're revisiting every season of American Horror Story for our Patreon subscribers. Because as everybody knows, this is also the Ryan Murphy podcast. Hey, our second most popular episode, right? Our second, our third, our fourth, and our sixth most popular episodes right now are all Ryan Murphy shows. So, hey, what can I say? But we are going to be recording our episode next weekend for seasons 3 and 4. And as I said before, I don't like season 3 anymore. Season 4, it's weird because I used to hate this season and it keeps growing on me. But I will say, like I was telling Jen before, and this is not just because I love Finn Wittrock, but honestly, when Dandy Mott is not on, it's so flippin' boring because I don't know. I mean, he's so good. And he doesn't have any kind of different makeup except for his hair has that weird swishy thing in the front sometimes. But he looks the same, but he is not attractive at all in this season. And that just goes to show what a great actor he is because the character is so horrendous. So go become a Patreon subscriber. Link is in our the show notes, or you can head on over to our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And for as little as $3 a month, you get some bonus episodes like that. We're going to have a Destiel fanfic recording at some point. I haven't even read the fanfic yet, but we're going to record it in June or July or sometime around then. So that's what I'm into as a way to promote the podcast.
Nicely done.
Yes. I'm into watching a grown man throw tantrums and murder people and bathe in their blood. It's
Totally normal stuff.
Yeah, totally normal stuff. Fergie has been loving it. Fergie's like, yes, we're back to murder.
Very distinctive taste.
She does, man. She's like, yes, no more comedy. We're back to murder. Thank God. Okay, so we're going to be getting into Married with Children now. And I'm going to have, like I've been having, some trivia. If you don't know what Married with Children is, this is a show that you would not have shows like the one we're talking about next week. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia without Married with Children, honestly. Married with Children came out on Fox. It was like the first primetime series to ever air on Fox. And it follows the Bundys. Al Bundy is a shoe salesman in Chicago, married to Peggy, who is a housewife, and then their two kids, Kelly and Bud. And it is basically they like hate each other, yet they really love each other. They are completely horrible, awful people. And that's just the best way to sort of describe it. I'm sure everybody knows what Married with Children is. I mean, if you don't, I don't know where you were, but unless you're really young, maybe you don't.
Like
But-
not born.
Who are like, oh, I wasn't even born in the 80s. Like, you know what? Shut up.
Oh, it's so that's so vintage. Like, oh,
Well,
don't.
it ended in the 90s. It ended in the late
Yeah.
90s. So like 90s.
Which is retro.
Yeah, that's true. So
And then they're
that
gonna
makes
tell
me
you,
sad.
oh my god, I was like 4.
Yeah. Yeah. But some little trivia here. Like I said, this was the first primetime series aired on Fox. It debuted on Sunday, April 5th, 1987 at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Carla has left because it was the first episode repeated twice throughout the night. The series and the fledgling Fox network were little known until the season 3, episode 6 episode, Her Cups Runneth Over, which Michigan housewife and family values activist Terry Rakolta found so offensive that she began a letter writing campaign to the show's sponsors to try to get them to withdraw their sponsorship and for Fox to drop the show. A few sponsors did cancel their commercials, but her efforts had exactly the opposite effect. Duh. The story spread like wildfire and resulted in a huge jump in the ratings for the show. It made this show a major hit and put Fox on the map. The show's cast and crew sent Rakolta, I love this, flowers every year that it was renewed. While the whole controversy was spoofed in season 9, episode 9, No Pot to Peas In, the Bundy family learns that there is a show based on their lives, which subsequently gets canceled because a housewife in Michigan didn't like it. So I'm just going to share just that bit of trivia there, just because I love that. I love that they sent her flowers every year it got renewed, because it is because of her. I mean, it's that, it's the whole
Class act.
yeah. It fits the show. So we're going to start just asking some of your favorite moments or episodes, 3 max, Carla.
That was very pointed. No kidding.
I don't know why I didn't to say it like that. It's like,
Carla.
go, Carla.
Carla.
Speak now, Carla. And then I'll say, speak, Jen. And I'll say to myself,
Wow.
speak, Aaron.
Speak, Aaron.
This podcast suddenly got very bossy.
Say
It's
yes,
a fandom
mistress.
bossy thing. Carla,
It's a
thanks
fandom
off.
bossy.
Boom. All right. Well, I think one of my favorite moments comes in the pilot, and it's just watching Al and Peg's interaction in just those first couple of minutes where she's like kind of cooking and like doing her thing where she's kind of like bouncing, and you hear Al, what, Peg? It just establishes kind of who they are in relation to each other and the kind of marriage that they have. And I really, especially that first season, really felt like it could have been just a stage play. I felt like that a lot of the times throughout the run of the show, that it was almost like you could see this on a stage, on a rotating basis, and just see it, and it's new every time. And it's really, even now, being the person that I am now with the values and the ideals that I have now, and going back and watching it and shaking my fist at certain things, I'm like, it's still unbelievably entertaining and very watchable. But it gets established right at that very first scene. Second, and it's more like repeated things. It's anytime that Kelly says something unexpectedly smart, you just like, where did you learn that? And she's like, oh, well, I had to learn it because, birth control interacts with this, or you have to, when she's talking to somebody about, well, if you've taken these pills and then you need to take them at this, blah, 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 because your cycle, and it's like, oh my God.
It's a very Alexis Rose of her in a way.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah. And I really love seeing those moments where Kelly, where you can see that part of her whole being. I wonder how much of that might have been different if she were raised by different people.
Yeah.
Because, like if she applied herself in the thing that she was interested in, maybe she wouldn't be having so Kelly, but then she wouldn't be Kelly Bundy. And then anytime that Al goes, "Let's rock," I don't know why, but
I
I just
know.
love
I
it.
agree.
And the thing is, like, he says that he thinks that he's so sexy saying it. He's so into himself when he's like, "Let's rock," and it's this aging man who is like kind of hunched over, and he looks like, I don't know, like I just feel so bad for him every time I look at him. Sometimes I'm like, dude, like, can I buy you a meal? Like, do I need to call somebody for you, sir? Are you all right, sir? Like, what can I do to help you in your time of need? But he says it with like the confidence of somebody who, who eats protein regularly and who doesn't use the bathroom as often as he does. Just like let's rock. Yeah,
True.
Al, I believe that you believe you're sexy.
Absolutely.
So true. That's so true. Yep. Yep. And just a quick note on that. The reason Ed O'Neill got this role, the reason he was cast, and I mean, I can't imagine anyone else in this part, but the reason he was cast is because a lot of people were worried because he had done just dramatic work before this. And when he came in to audition for the role, right before he walked through the door, he did this deep sigh and then did the hunched over thing, walked in, and the people said, he gets it. He knows who this character is. So that whole body thing of what you're
That's
saying.
amazing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's so specific. It is so Al Bundy.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks so downtrodden in every single scene in every single season.
He does. He's just like, just
Even
done.
even when, like, if somebody's actually flirting with him, even if he's actually getting his way, he looks so hunched over, kind of like, I've given up on life. I guess this is nice.
Yep. It's true. It's true. Yeah. So Jen.
Well, this show, so as I explained to Aaron before, this was today's recording was kind of a maybe for me if I had the time for it. I ended up having the time for it, but I didn't get a proper rewatch in. But I'm like, you know what? I grew up on this show. This was a show we sat around as a family and watched. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can like BS my way through this with all due respect, Aaron.
No, I totally get it with this one.
So I haven't gone back to rewatch it, but I'm a little hesitant too because I know that it hasn't aged well. I know there's the body shaming, the womanizing and everything. And I would like to keep that in a little nostalgia pocket and not revisit it with today's eyes. But I mean, like I said, I grew up with this show. I love it. I love this family. I love this take on this dysfunctional take on the nuclear family. Here we see husband, wife, daughter, son, dog, and everyone's miserable, even the dog. Even good old Buck. Loved that dog so much. But yeah, I did always kind of love those moments where they would come together and defend the Bundy family name. And some moments that always kind of stood out were, you know, as Carla was saying, when Al says, "Let's rock," with that confidence, that's the confidence of a man who scored four touchdowns in a single game. So I always love him holding on to that moment of glory of when he peaked. And honey, it's 4 touchdowns. I don't think that's maybe in high school, 7, I don't know. But I always just kind of loved that. Here's this man beaten and like physically like hunched over from like the weight of the world and life, just pushing him down. But he puffs up and he holds on to that. That's the only thing, not the birth of his children, not his wedding day.
Oh.
Old football glory days. So I love it so much that I a long time ago, I bought my husband a t-shirt that says like Polkai and kind of like a Jersey style looking t-shirt, and it just always made us chuckle. Um, I always loved like and I love like, Kelly and Peggy, these two, especially Peggy and her outfits. She wasn't like a frumpy mom.
She was amazing.
She had that hair, and my dumbass thought it was real for a lot of years. And I was like, I love her big red hair.
You know what though? It was real for the first 3 seasons.
Okay, so
And
there, I
In
win.
the first season, she did it herself. And then
Okay.
Yeah.
when they were like suddenly successful, they started buying her wigs, and she's like, oh, "We've made it."
I love that. And yeah, especially in the earlier seasons, it's the 80s, smoking everywhere. And even in the opening credits, she's making a salad and the big old cigarette hanging out of her mouth. Oh God, I love it. And they weren't good with their money. There's no food in the fridge. So I just loved this dysfunctional family and seeing that dark side of like, your Donna Reeds and your Leave It to Beavers kind of thing. We have a nuclear family in suburban middle America, but life sucks. And yeah, Kelly when she has her moments of smarts, but then just the classic Channel Fox of the woo and any moderately sexy thing happens, or the gasps of, like a wicked burn of so just those audience reactions, those live studio audience reactions are classic. And I love them, and they get parodied in a lot of other things now, and and we wouldn't have those without the Bundys and this show. So childhood favorite. My dad was always like, "Oh, I can relate to Al.
My dad.
I've got a dim-witted daughter and a short son." I was like, "What?" I mean, I got it. It wasn't like, "What? I don't get it." It was like,
Like, yep, that's totally what? What does dim-witted mean?
I'm just like, "Yeah, you're so blessed, Daddy."
That was very Kelly there.
Sister?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this show is very nostalgic for me too. And not my mom didn't like this show, but my dad loved this show. So it's very my dad and I would watch it all the time when I would, it'd be my night to be over at my dad's. And my dad's from Chicago. My side of the family is there. So that was another part of it. And he very much related to Al. He's like loved Al. And it holds this special place in my heart. And I know it's problematic as hell, but at the same time, I honestly think this show, I think the viewers maybe not, but I think this show honestly doesn't really believe the stuff that it's, hey Panda, long time
Hi.
no see, hi. We're not seeing you, but you know what I mean. But so even though I know it's problematic, it's weird because I can forgive so much in this show because of how much nostalgia I have for it and how much love I have for it, because these people never get what they want. It's not like they ever get rewarded for how awful they are, especially Al. Al never gets and like Ed O'Neill, the way he wanted the show to end, and they were never told it was canceled, which is just horrible. Ed O'Neill found out when he was on vacation and a family told him it was canceled. So he bought them a meal because the studio didn't tell them they were canceled. I know.
Terrible.
That's and
so
I know
terrible.
they built that network. It's just typical
Mhm.
for Fox, even back then.
Yeah, we should have known. The signs were all there.
It is so disrespectful.
It's so
Yeah.
disrespectful. It's like so awful. But he wanted it to be that they won the lottery and then a tornado came in and killed them. Which would have happened.
That would have been amazing.
That would have been brilliant.
That was his idea, which would have been great. Instead of, the series finale we got is nothing they planned because they didn't know they were getting canceled. So it's not, so I don't even blame the finale at all for being what it was. But some of my favorite moments are, and I shared this video when Kelly is, and this speaks to sometimes when Kelly has those brilliant moments, when Kelly becomes a hustles pool and Jefferson's helping her, and at first Al thinks that Jefferson's like pimping her out. And because Al would get so protective of Kelly, which can verge on that I own your body crap. But I'm okay with it for some reason. But so he goes down to the pool hall and he's about to beat up Jefferson, and then he discovers, that she's good at pool and she needs a certain amount of money to take on this other pool shark. So he goes and he donates blood. He donates 9 pints of blood, which is more than the human body holds. And he's like, but the brain holds some. And then he's like, but he's like, oh, look at the pretty colors, all the pretty colors. Everything looks like noodles. later on, he gets up to give her a pep talk because he's like passed out. He did like air drum solos to It's a Small World After All this stuff. And Jefferson's like, well, we could win $10,000. So he gets up there to give her a pep talk. And he's like, Ajija Baja Bija. And then he like knocks his head. And then he gives her this huge pep talk. And then what happens, of course, is he passes out on the pool table. It hits his head, so they don't win. Kelly lies to him, but says a goat came in and stole the money. And he's still gone. He's like, I saw that goat. I know where that goat lives. Let's go get the goat. I've been watching clips of just that episode over and over again because Ed O'Neill, this whole cast is amazing, but Ed O'Neill is so flippin' brilliant in this role, and he's so good in that scene because it's just like it's so ridiculous.
So
And he
ridiculous.
does it where it's believable. It doesn't seem too over the top. So yeah, and you're welcome. You're welcome, Panda. I'm so glad they arrived. So Panda won some prizes for donating because she generously donated. So she got the Supernatural signed magazine, and she also received it's a Christian effing Bale thing magnet, and also I threw in some of our horror themed stuff too. So I'm glad they got there. So yay.
Congratulations, Panda.
Congrats. One of the things that I also loved in that scene when you sent that clip over was, they're at a bar, obviously, for the pool hustle, but he's drinking. He
I
donated
know.
more blood than his body can handle, and he's just drinking beer.
Well, he's not even drinking it though. He's pouring it into his hand, and he's like, and it's falling, and then he's like pretending. But then later he's drinking it, and he says to Jefferson, it wasn't in that clip, but later if you keep watching, he's drinking, and Jefferson said, "Are you sure you should be doing that?" He's like, "I realize the brain just needs to be wet. It doesn't need blood." And Jefferson's face. I loved Jefferson and Al's interactions. They were such a good pair because they were such idiots. And another favorite is when they're trying to put together a workbench and Peggy and Marcy are just watching them and taking pictures because they're being idiots. And there's this whole scene where like Jefferson's kneeling down, he's holding up a thing of wood, and Al's got like a drill, and it's right here. And he's like, okay, just hold it still. And everybody's like, and then Al electrocutes himself. And so Peggy's taking pictures, and then Marcy's like, so do you think Jefferson will be stupid enough to go and unplug it at the same time? And then Jefferson goes, I'll save you, buddy. And he goes and electrocutes himself. That was so funny, so hilarious. So I love those. And then a sweet moment is there's an episode where Vanna White guest starred, and Vanna White wants to buy Al. She's been in love with Al, and so she goes and purchases Al. And then Peggy is leaving, and Peggy's like, saying, no, you need to make sure this and this when he's sleeping. And she looks sad, and he looks sad. And then she comes back and is like, nope, this is my husband. So I want to stay with my husband. And it was just one of those, they had a lot of those moments where even though they acted like they hated each other, they actually really deeply loved each other. That's what was so weird. So I liked that just because it was kind of sweet. It was like, nope, this is my husband.
That reminds me of the episode with Robert Englund when he's the
Yes.
devil.
Oh yeah.
And so they're in hell, and then the Bundys and the Darcys play against um the Devil's team, which has like Goliath and I forget what other big baddies of history. And the Bundys are getting creamed, but then they start coming back, and the Devil's like sensing that he's about to lose, and he's like, "Wait, wait, wait, Al! If you drop this pass, because he's about to catch it, if you drop this pass, um, I send you back. No, if you catch it, I will send you back, and all of your family and neighbors come with you. If you drop it, I send you back with all of this cash and all of these like sexy models." And then Al ends up making the catch. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yeah, it was like they're deep down, they really loved each other. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not saying this was a healthy family, but
No, but they had their moments. I remember like there'd be someone coming for the family or someone of the
yes.
family, and they would band together and go and fight them or whatever. I remember this this one night in high school on like a Friday night football game, walking through the parking lot, and there is some teenage shit going on, and one girl's all talking shit, and I swear to you, she quoted Married with Children, some line about how you don't mess with my family and these are my people, or kind of something along those lines of being very defensive. And the girl at school was being defensive about her friends. And she quoted Married with Children. And I just chuckled to myself as I walked past because I'm like, I'm not involved in any of that. So I'm just going to keep going. But it just made me laugh so freaking hard. I was like, you want to sound like such a badass that you're quoting Married with Children. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And Erin, when you mentioned the Vanna White episode, the one thing I remember from that episode is Vanna White shows up at the door, and Peg and Kelly and Bud are down on the floor, like rubbing her legs, and they're like, "Oh, your
Yeah.
pantyhose are such smooth silk." And she's like, "I'm not wearing pantyhose." And they're like, "Wow." I think about that. I don't whenever I shave my legs. Like, "Oh, it's so smooth."
That's hilarious. Yeah, yeah. Well, and I was watching one of the best of clips where they were talking about some of their favorite episodes, and they all said she was so sweet and so nice. They said that was one of their favorites because of her. So, yeah, I think.
And just to have Vanna White on that show during that time,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
know.
peak Wheel, peak Bundy's, and sure, let's cross them over. No, but what?
I know because she was thought of as like very wholesome and very next door, and so for her to do that, I think said a lot about her. More than I mean, really, she was probably like, I want to break out of this image a little bit. I'm not
Mhm.
just someone who turns wheels. I mean, wheels, tiles, or whatever they.
She's doing alignments down at the gym. She's more than that.
Alignments. Oh man. Yes, I see. I love this show as problematic as it is when you look at it. I mean, because I mean the racism and the homophobia, because there's everything in here, and the sexism and stuff like that. So there is a lot of that in here, especially the sexism and the fat phobia more than any other thing in here. So yeah, and we'll get to that talking about that. But I just have such a soft spot for it that it's hard for me to get angry at this show just because I loved it so much and it was such a part of my childhood. So yeah. So let's talk about the Bundys. So so we did a poll and everybody's favorite turned out to be Peggy. Al and Kelly were tied for second. Bud didn't get a single vote. It fits the character.
So classic.
I know. So Al Bundy was played by Ed O'Neill. Peggy Bundy was played by the amazing Katie Seagal, who is such a fantastic actress. Love her, adore her. And then Kelly Bundy was played by another fantastic actress, Christina Applegate. And then Bud Bundy, David Faustino.
Say the point for this rant though.
dog, Buck Bundy, who, when Buck Bundy died, he gets reincarnated into their new dog, Lucky.
Yep.
Poor Buck. Which little trivia about the dog constantly was humping Katie Seagal's leg for the longest time.
It's in those animal print outfits.
Yes, probably.
Yep.
So, yeah, and then for Peggy, her whole look was totally Katie Seagal came up with that.
Mhm.
Came up with wanting it to be kind of a 50s style housewife thing. So, yes, she is amazing. So, Carla, what are your general thoughts on the Bundys?
Oh my God. You know, for a group of people who are just absolutely awful, they're the worst of the worst. They are the most unimaginable. Just, I would not want to be living near them, on the same block as them, in the same city as them, preferably. I don't care how big Chicago is, it's not big enough to live with them. However, they're delightful to watch on television. And for starters, it's because the cast is so fantastic. They really, these characters would not be anywhere near as enjoyable in the show, and not only the show, but then other shows that came after it that try to do this, this kind of send up of the classic family sitcom. It wouldn't have succeeded as well if these had tanked. And Al being the awful father, awful husband, terrible employee. Like, how does he continue being employed? Like, it's Gary just kind of using this place as a tax shelter, and she just gets to write it off every year, being like, "Oh, we have sold even fewer shoes. It's fantastic." Like, that's the only reason I can think for why she keeps him and Griff employed. And at first, it was the guy Luke, who I was so glad that
Yes.
he left, because Griff, I thought, was like a nice balance to Al,
Mhm.
because he wasn't more slimy than Al. I don't think anybody needed more slimy. But Al, with all of his, hatred of everybody and his disdain for everything involved in being a grown up. I don't know. Like, was he this miserable as a child? Is it something that, like, it wasn't until he was married that he was, because he seemed to be smiling just fine when he was working with his dad in that car that one time. And, like, he seemed perfectly happy then and well adjusted. And then suddenly it's like, great, now I have children and I'm married and I hate it. But every time that he and Peggy would get separated, or, that one time that they broke up or whatever, when they got back together, it wasn't even just because it was convenient for him, or because he couldn't do any better. It was sincerely because they wanted to be with each other. They just kept gravitating back towards each other, which I think they should see a therapist about, because it was a very
A
toxic
lot.
marriage. Like, whoa. Like, whoa.
Yes.
All right, whoa.
Very unhealthy.
Yeah. Oh, and it was actually, oh God, it was actually when they were seeing a therapist that
Yeah.
they broke up in the session. So that it worked. They just ended up getting back together. Damn it. Okay. Um, but yeah, and he really, he couldn't tell you a damn thing about his own children. I mean, one time he's sitting next to Kelly. He's like, "How old are you?" Like, like, I one of my favorite memories is carrying you from the hospital to the car, and then 10 years later I took you out for ice cream, and now here we are.
It's
And
true.
she says to him that, that if she had to count her age by the amount of parties that he threw her, she would be 3 years old. um but and especially Kelly, he has a special fondness for. Like, he really protects his little princess. And I love when he calls her pumpkin, even when he's
Me
insulting her.
too.
Mhm.
Pumpkin. I'm like this. Like, he's a horrible father, but that is adorable.
It is.
He's trash, but oh, he called her pumpkin. Um, and I especially loved that the man could, like, just throw out an insult at warp speed. I have never seen a character on television who can insult somebody that fast. You know, like the only remnants of his athletic ability are the speed with which he throws insults. Like that's, you know, kudos, sir, kudos. Um, in the poll, I picked Peggy as well because I think she's just like awesome. You know, like the fact that she's useless as a homemaker, notwithstanding, I think she's fantastic because she really knows what Al's about. She knows what her life is about. And yes, she's none of them are ever happy, but she I think is at least at peace with her pile of crap life. And she kind of makes the best of it. You know, like there are many opportunities that she has to do better for herself that she decides, you know, too much effort or just not interested. She goes to work at the what is it, the Jiggly Room just to win a contest, and then Al falls in love with her character who was Jasmine, and she ends up making like hundreds of dollars a night. And then like she's like, I'm good. I admire her complete lack of ambition. I also admire her outfits, and you know, I just didn't understand why everybody was like, "Oh, she dresses so trashy." I'm like, "What is trashy about the way she dresses? Like, that is like the least trashy thing about her. There's so many things you could pick on her for being trashy about. It's not the outfits."
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is coming off the heels of so many family shows where the women don't dress in skin tight clothing. And it has more to do with society's view of what is wholesome and pure and what is maternal and womanly
Mm-hmm.
than it does with Peggy and her outfits themselves, because in and of themselves they're inoffensive. I mean, like the worst thing you could say about them is that she has way too much of a prevalence for leopard print,
Hmm.
entirely too much. But that's about it. Like, there's nothing inherently trashy about what she wears. Um, she's also, I think, you know, not that that it's a particularly high bar, but she's the better parent. She actually remembers her kids exist
Yeah.
more often than not. Um, she's also hilariously adept at bringing Al down. Like nobody brings, and even though Al himself brings himself down continuously, she does it. She does it better than anyone, man. She's just fantastic at just bringing him down to his level and at figuring out what it is that he's really doing and either just letting it ride because who cares? He's gonna screw himself anyway, so I don't have the time to really do that. Or coming up with like just these amazing plans to foil that. And just, you know, she's just really cool. And also, I think Katie Sagal is fantastic.
She's so good.
Hmm.
Yes, because she makes Peg, for all that Peg is useless, she gives her like this dignity and this she gives her like respect, you know, because Peggy, if nothing else, she likes herself. She respects herself. She believes that she's a good person who is just living her best life. And I don't think that anybody else could have pulled that off. One of the contenders for Peggy was actually Roseanne Barr.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was known back then. Can you just imagine that? I mean, like, you
No.
wouldn't
No.
have the Peggy that we love because it would have just been so abrasive. And so that would have been like a trashy portrayal of Peggy, I think, because Roseanne is trash. But Katie Sagal just herself is not a trashy person. It's hard to see her as trashy. I love Kelly. She's my second favorite of all the Bundys. She's hilarious. She's dopey as hell, but she's fine with it. She's funny. She, for all of the show, does a lot of slut shaming when it comes to Kelly. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of it, like to a ridiculous amount, where it's like, you know, pick a side. Either you like your women skanky or you don't, but you don't get to put it all on this child because Christina Applegate was a teen when she started on this series, and they're dressing her in like, you know, crop tops and tight stuff and whatever, and then they call her trashy for the next 11 years of her life. Um, but she didn't really, partly because it didn't register, but she didn't really care. She just, she's like, I'm happy doing this. I'm happy being adored by guys all over the place, and like nobody can take that away from her. And I was like, okay, good for you. Um, I loved that for all that she really made Bud's life miserable, but that's because he was a miserable little boy, then young man, then gross man. So he earned all of that misery, but she was she would stand up for him when it counted, even though he didn't deserve it because he's trash. And then
Yep.
Bud himself, the less said about him, the better. He was just disgusting and creepy from the beginning. They had no reason to make a child character that filthy from the beginning. Although, that's part of what worked for the show. And frankly, the acting was not that good, so whatever. I was watching, as I was, streaming through these episodes. My husband came in and he enjoyed a couple of them because he also enjoys the show. And there were a couple of moments with Bud, and he's like, "Oh wow, the acting there is awful." Everybody else, he was like, "She's great, he's great," and he was like, "Oh, that kid is awful."
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's why he was the only one I didn't praise.
And then they were saying Faustino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably why he didn't get a single vote. He's like,
Yes. Bud who?
Mhm.
"Who's Bud?"
Well, what was his DJ name again? Let me check.
Grandmaster B,
Oh my god.
which was the reason they did that was David Faustino was trying to have his own rap career, so they were poking fun at him.
Good,
Just,
as
I mean,
they
he
should have.
is the whitest white to ever white, and he wanted to be a rapper, bro.
I know, Grandmaster B.
Please.
And then he had all those other ones, like he was a cowboy, wasn't he? A cowboy. He was a cowboy for a little bit, and all these other things he would try to do. But yeah, so Jen, what are your general thoughts on the Bundys?
Oh, I love this messed up, dysfunctional, toxic ass family. I love. Okay, so I already said a bit about Al and how he's kind of holding on to the past, and I love Peggy because she's in a way doing that by still kind of showing off her body and wearing maybe like an old hairstyle from when she peaked, but she's also like very confident in herself, as Carla said. And I agree. I think she's the most content with her life because she doesn't do anything. Why why rock the boat? She's got a pretty like she just takes Al's money and does whatever, doesn't really care. She, yeah, does acknowledge that she has children and they exist and she'll listen to them once in a while, but I just, oh, I love her little walk, her little kind of sway, and her little like slipper heels or whatever, and her ow, just the best. Katie
That
Seagal
was
is
so perfect.
That was.
so, but I love that, yeah, she fought back. Like this character is not that nuclear mom, wholesome and everything, but she's not a bad person. And I don't think she dresses trashy, maybe a little tacky, depending on what your tastes are, but there was nothing like just because she's not in a full skirt and a string of pearls and being all doting and everything. So I love that this family challenged all those ideas of what not a happy, not a functioning, but what a family can be and how they can still be there for each other and still hate each other so much. But you know, Peg and Al do there is something there, and it's gotten lost over the years with the stress of being an adult and getting beaten down. But I don't think it's like a codependency thing. I think that at some point they actually loved each other. Um, but not seeing that is just such a play on that time and like all those "take my wife, please" kind of jokes. It's
Mhm.
like my grandpa had like a decal that said like what was it like I got something about like I got this car for my wife as a trade or something, meaning he traded his wife for the car. And I just never understood these kind of jokes coming from like very like Christian religious families that believe in the sanctity of marriage. I'm like, then maybe not joke about like ditching your
Mhm.
spouse or running over your spouse. So I think this show did a really good job kind of making fun of that and just putting it in such a ridiculous context that I think too many people actually bought into of like, yeah, they get it. It's like, no, they're making fun of you. This is how ridiculous you look. You look like Al Bundy.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so that's Peg and Al. Yeah, and I love Peggy. I love Katie Seagal. Everything. She's always going to be Peggy Bundy to me, even though she's amazing in the other things that she has done since.
And she's a
Uh,
great singer. I just want to throw that in there. She's an amazing singer too. So
yeah, I think I have heard her. I'm not sure where I've made, but yeah. Um, Christina Applegate, love her. Loved Kelly Bundy. I love seeing this like little kind of rocker chick, wild child rebel from like the early seasons where she's just got like that bleach damaged as shit bleach blonde hair
yep.
and just still going off and being Kelly and doing Kelly things. And growing up, I always looked at her as someone who was, even though they did do like, putting her in the slutty clothes and then slut shaming her, still someone who was very like body positive and very confident in it.
Mhm.
She was slutty. She knew it. She didn't care. She got things. She used her wiles to get what she wanted. She rolled with like bad boys with the leather jackets and the motorcycles and the bit too old to be hanging out with a girl that's supposedly in high school. I did like that Kelly's character as the series went on. I wonder if Christina Applegate maybe started having a bit more input on how the character was dressed because she dressed less revealing clothing, still, like form-fitting crop tops or whatever, but um and she had like cut her hair. She had, I think, the Rachel for a little while, but she got less, her clothing got less revealing, but she also got dumber.
She did.
So I wasn't so what yeah, that's fine. But I always loved Kelly. I always kind of in a weird way kind of looked up to her because I was like, she's gonna do what she wants, and she's got her dad wrapped around her finger, so she's able to do what she wants. And she's got like, yeah, all this like really cool, like sexy clothes and like just kind of a badass look. So I love me some Kelly Bundy. And Buck is great. Buck the dog is my favorite.
Love Buck. I love
That's
Buck.
such a miserable, poor fucking dog stuck with that terrible family.
I know, but Kelly loved Buck so much, and when Buck died, and how heartbroken she was.
Mhm. But it's like, what did the soul of Buck do in a prior life to be reincarnated back into this family?
I know.
Okay, and so for Bud, yeah, Bud was always gross. I don't know if it was supposed to be kind of a play on the this kind of family not paying attention to their kids, and so kind of both of them are running a bit wild, but they're not reining in his horniness and his perviness and being like, "Dude, you gotta cool it," No parenting whatsoever. So maybe that's what happened to Bud, is they just didn't care because Kelly is Al's princess, so he's always gonna have a bit of an eye on what's going on there. But, like, Bud's not even like a mama's boy in any
No.
so I think just the neglect, and Bud is definitely the kid that is going to try and move away as soon as he can. He's always got these schemes to make it big and to move away. And I don't know, maybe he'll end up in LA and be a waiter or something. But I don't think he's
Be a
ever going
waiter
to
or
realize
something.
any of his dreams. But he's going to keep
I
trying
don't
and he's
know.
going
I
to come up
mean,
with these schemes.
he's white. He's mediocre. and he's a perv, so I think he'll fit right in Hollywood.
I
so
was gonna say
true. So
Congress,
true.
politics,
Either one.
possibly.
A bright future ahead of him.
That's so true.
Damn
That's
it.
sad but true. Sad but true. Well, I love this family. They are awful, horrible. I mean, I don't love Bud though. I will say I don't have any kind of soft feelings for him at all. I think he's icky and gross, and this is going to be really gross, but I would hate to wash his sheets. I think. Or his room must smell so bad.
So gross.
That's all I can think about is that it's just
Don't look at any clothing or towels or like pillowcases next to his bed, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's just not but my favorite is probably Peggy, but Kelly is a really close second. They're kind of tied in a lot of respects, and what I love about Peggy, and even though yes, she does horrible things, all of these people do, but she still embraces the fact that she's a woman and her sexuality and how sexy she's very flippin' sexy, and she still wants sex. I'm like, you could do so much better than Al, but okay. I mean, she wants Al all the time, which always blows my mind because I'm like, I don't know what you see. Love is blind, I guess, but
And what baffles me is like, yeah, she's hot. He's not,
so
and it's
hot.
like, dude, you have a hot wife that
know.
wants to do you all the time, and
I
you're just like,
know.
I don't want to. Sex is work.
I know. Well, what's so interesting about the show, in the beginning, they actually really both desired each other. Like he wanted to have sex with her all the time too, and then slowly as it went on, that changed. But yeah, I think it's kind of plays into this thing of like when you're married to someone for a long time, some people don't still desire their spouse or something. So I think that's kind of what they were trying to talk about. But I mean, like he like buys her, like in season 11, those few episodes where they break up, and he buys her this outfit that in no way would fit her. So he doesn't even know what she looks like, doesn't even realize how lucky he is until other people desire her. And then he does. But it takes that. But then, I mean, when she's the stripper and he doesn't know it's her and he falls in love with her. So it's like she's so sexy. And the way she walks around in confidence and those heels all the time, I would be in pain constantly. I don't know how she does that. And even when she crosses her leg and shakes her leg, and it's just, I just love it. And her bonbon eating, and how into Oprah, because Oprah was very different at that time. I don't think people realize that Oprah's show was very much like Phil Donahue and all of those.
That's right.
It was.
You know what? I'm so old that I forgot.
But it was very much like that. Yeah, and then Oprah didn't want to be trashy, so she kind of changed her way. And it's funny because there's an episode in here where before Jerry Springer became what Jerry Springer was more like in that line. And there's an episode where where No Ma'am, where they go and they take hostage Jerry Springer. It's so funny. They're so inept at it, but they do it anyway. But so I just love how she just embraces that. She's like, no, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to cook. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to. And I don't know how they survive on a shoe salesman's salary and in that house they live in, but they never eat. So, but I still don't know how they survive, because it's like, how in the world do you ever make it? Yeah,
and then inflation, and then the recession.
I know.
And America and values and trickle down economy.
Yeah,
and no more taxes.
So yeah, I don't know how they make it, but yeah. And then Al is just, Al is really, I would never want to be married to Al. I'd never want to live next to Al. I'd never want to know Al. But I love Al in some weird way, because Ed O'Neill does such a good job with this character of, he plays this character with this false confidence. Like you were saying, Carla, earlier when you're talking about is let's rock. Whenever he says that, and he's got such confidence when he does it. And yet he is this shell of a man. No one can ever say his name right. Whenever he's in the papers, it's like there's Al Bindi, they mess his name up so much. And he never can win. He always loses. No matter what he tries, he never wins. He never can get anything. And but he still tries, and he thinks he is in this different level than people than he actually is. He thinks that the fact that he scored 4 touchdowns in high school makes him this superior person, and he's that person that peaked in high school and never ever can go beyond that. He can never get better than when he was in high school. And that's where Al Bundy lives. So he's kind of trapped in that high school thing of when he was in high school, he was the popular football jock guy, and he's not anymore. And so he's just stuck there and thinks he still is that guy, and he's not. Whereas Peg, she is still that hot person. That's never gone away. She's still hot as hell. She could get anything she wants. Really. She's so sexy. When they break up and they both end up at the same club, and she like unbuttons her because she's like, oh, and I taught Kelly to do that when she was in junior high. And she unbuttons the top buttons and she gets all this attention. And then Al, because he's jealous, goes and does it. And he's like this. And somebody's like, and this woman goes up, he's having a heart attack. So nobody finds him sexy except for Vanna White in that episode. But yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. So they can't really live without each other. In some weird way, I think Al needs Peg more than Peggy needs Al, because like you see that when they break up. Peggy,
Well, I mean, they're barely broken up, and she pulls like a millionaire,
yeah, and
and
he gets
Al's living by the airport in an apartment that like starts falling apart every time a plane flies by.
I know, with
And
the waterbed.
Yes, and he doesn't even get to do anything fun in the waterbed. Like by
I know.
accident, it gets a hole poked in it. It wasn't like a sexual adventure kind of thing. The man's a loser.
He is. He's such a loser. He's so lucky to have Peggy. He's
Mhm.
so flippin' lucky. And then Kelly, I love Kelly. And yes, they do a lot of slut shaming with Kelly, but Kelly, what I appreciate about her is even though you may think she lets all these people take advantage of her, she knows when someone is actually really using her, and she will stick up for herself. She will actually do that. She will put a guy in his place. And I really appreciated that about her. And I'm like you, Jen. I kind of looked up to her too when I was younger. I was like, I would love to be Kelly.
Mhm.
She's so sexy. She gets whatever. And, guys, she gets all these hot guys, which I'm watching now. I'm like, these are not hot guys. What the hell? But she was just really cool. And she was like the chick. And I use chick just because I think it kind of fits this thing. But she
Mhm.
was the girl that didn't give a crap about anything and didn't care what people thought of her, and she really doesn't. She knows people think of her as a slut and stupid, but she doesn't care. She kind of owns that, and she turns it around and uses it sometimes for her own gain. And then like you said, Carla, and like when I was talking about the bowling, the pool episode, she'll have those moments where she's so good at something and she knows something so well, and so she succeeds. And this, she kind of plays into, there was this whole thing of like a lot of teenage girls on shows like Family Ties and other shows, they'd have the stupid one, the really dumb one. And this one is to the nth degree. And I think it's playing on that, but they're also giving her some agency. And, I know it was really hard for Christina Applegate because people thought she was Kelly Bundy. And so she would get, oh my gosh, I can't imagine the men afterwards
Oh.
and the way men would, just watching it now, and every time she'd come on and you hear those like hoots and stuff, and people thought she must be dumb. And like Ed O'Neill said, in order to play a character like this so well and as well as she does, you have to be incredibly smart and an incredibly good actor, and she is an incredibly good actor. And I
Mhm.
mean, he said she would nail it in like one take. She's so good. Watch Dead to Me.
Mhm.
So just throwing that out there on Netflix. Great show. So she's just a natural and she gets Kelly. And you can tell, I think all these actors really love their characters and it comes through. Like I mean, I'm not saying they're good characters, but they love the characters and they love each other for the most part. They all got along, except for, I'll say in a minute, a couple of people that did not get along. But I love them as a family unit. And Bud, I don't like Bud, but even though I don't like him and I don't think the performance is as good, the show wouldn't work without him for some reason. So even though I don't like him, he's an essential piece to the puzzle. So yeah, and he's
Well, you needed at least one character to have ambition.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he does constantly, and no one. He's the smartest in the family, and no one supports him in wanting to, complete college, wanting to do better. Nobody supports him at all. It's the funniest thing. It's
I know.
they're like, whatever.
It's like he's the outcast of the family because
He
he's smart
is.
and has
Yes.
ambition and wants to like do better and get out.
Yes.
But he fits in so perfectly because even though he is smart, the show doesn't play him as being superior to them just for being
Yes.
smarter.
Yeah.
He is equally as awful as the rest of them, but he just happens
Mhm.
to be smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Academically smart, but yeah,
Yeah.
he's still dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his main goal in life is to get laid. That's he wants us to get laid. Yeah, it's his main mission. So yeah. And then he also wants to be in No Ma'am, but they wouldn't let him in.
Oh my God, no, ma'am.
Oh.
Oh, that
Those
was
men are the biggest idiots.
they
Mhm.
are. But when I was watching it growing up, I was like, they have a cool club.
They have a cool
Such a
club.
cool club. And then Al Bundy, like I think like the first time that I really heard "It's a Man's World" was Al Bundy singing it for No Ma'am. And then when I later heard like that it's James Brown, I was like, oh, this is a real song. Oh, this is so much better. But which, by the way, if anybody looks up that song, "It's a Man's World" by Joshua Ledet, he is amazing. He does an amazing rendition of that, but that's
I'll have
another
to do that. No, I'll have to look
story.
that up. Yeah.
It's really good.
So let's move on to the neighbors. So Marcy, played by Amanda Beers, who Amanda Beers and Ed O'Neill hated each other. By the way, they did not like each other at all. They did not like each other. In fact, the only people that Amanda did not invite to her wedding were Ed O'Neill and David Faustino. And well, a lot of the reason she did that, this is actually really gross on Ed O'Neill's part, is Amanda O'Neill was Amanda O'Neill. I'm sorry, I mean to marry you.
Whoa. I'm pretty sure she would riot if she
Like
heard that.
yikes.
Oh, sorry, Amanda. So Amanda Beers was out. She is a lesbian. She was getting married to her wife, and she didn't want anyone there that would make fun of them because I think they were both going to be wearing suits or something. And Ed O'Neill did admit that he probably would have. So that's icky and gross.
Yeah.
So I think there was some homophobia going on there, and a lot of the reason why they didn't get along with each other. So those are the only two that didn't get along, really. And then you have Jefferson, who is the second person that she marries, played by Ted McGinley. And then the first person that Marcy is married to is Steve Rhodes, played by David Garrison, who left because he wanted to go back to theater. And he was actually the first person cast in the show. But he left because he missed stage work. But he came back like practically every season. He came back once at least. So yes. So what are your overall thoughts on Marcy, Jefferson, and Steve, Carla?
Listen, I was so sad when Steve left. I loved him so much. I thought he was handsome.
That
What can I
tracks.
say? I was gonna say I have a type. I just thought that he was so cute, and I liked Marcy more in the beginning. I think as the seasons wore on, she just became so much more of a caricature than she was towards the beginning. But I think that's partly just the the length that the show went, and you can only do so much with that character when you just have her antagonizing Al, and that's all she's allowed to do.
Hmm.
Um, but I never really liked Marcy, except that I felt sorry for her because of how much Al picked on her. And I thought it was hilarious that she's constantly trying to improve Peg, who doesn't see a need to be improved. And the only reason that she ever tries to improve herself is either to make money to buy herself a VCR or to show up Al or to keep Al. Like there's a point at which, um, because Al, in part of the whole fat phobia and fat shaming that the show does, he would call her fat, and it's like, what are you even talking about?
Hmm.
So there was at least one episode that I remember where she's trying to lose weight, and it's also partly because Marcy's pushing this book on her about losing weight. So that didn't really the fact that Marcy was constantly trying to improve somebody that I thought was so wonderful really bothered me. So I
Hmm.
wasn't really a big fan of Marcy's. Um, I also didn't like her hair much towards the end, and it wasn't even the cut; it was the colors. There were just like too many highlights that made no sense, and that really was disturbing to me. So yeah, um, but the reason that I liked Steve so much is that I think that he was the more reasonable of the two because he at least seemed more human. Marcy was trying to have like this perfect marriage, be the perfect couple, be like pretend that she's like this perfect person. I just imagine like those moms at a playground and it's like, "Oh, I only feed my kid organic food that I make myself. I churn my own
Pepper.
butter." And like, okay, I get it. All right. Like, although to be perfectly honest, the first year of my son's life, we only fed him organic and we cooked it ourselves. But we didn't go around proclaiming it, mostly because we don't like people, or rather, I don't like people. So who was I going to proclaim it to? Because then I'd have to have a conversation and ew, gross. Ugh, who needs that? But Steve seemed much more accessible. Plus, again, handsome. And then Jefferson comes in, and I didn't like him at first because he's just so vapid, you know? And the reason that he grew on me is because he's vapid, but so handsome. Like, so handsome. Like, whoa, baby. And that's like the biggest part of his appeal is that he's so handsome because he's useless, he's I don't know how he ever worked for the CIA. Like, was he a janitor of the CIA? Was he like kind of lying about, oh yes, I used to work for the CIA, but in what capacity, sir? Can I see your
Janitor.
badge? Clearance? None.
Hmm.
Clearance, just the trash cans and then back out. That's it. That's his clearance. Um, but I really, even though Steve, up until they divorced, was nicer to Marcy, I because I didn't like Marcy, I was okay with Jefferson kind of using her. Even though person that I am, like I hate anybody being used, and I hate anybody um, who works hard being taken advantage of, especially by somebody who is proclaiming to love them. But I was like, but it's Marcy, so like I feel like
Eh.
it's kind of okay, and then there was that one episode where her cousin comes to town, and the cousin's a lesbian, and she's
Hmm.
out and all of that, and which is like, especially with what you said, Aaron, it's so paradoxical to me that Al really took to this
I know.
cousin, and they became basically besties, and they're like, oh, next time you're in town we'll hang out and whatever. It's just like whatever. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that other than I liked her better than I like Marcy.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I can't remember her name now, but yeah, she was, yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching
It
that
was also
episode today
played
too.
by it was also played by Amanda Beers, so I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't know her
That's
name, but she
right.
looked just like Marcy.
Yep.
Yeah. And Marcy was insanely jealous of her.
Yes.
Yes.
People didn't loathe her, so
Yes. And she had a boob job, so she was
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
right.
So she had like an A cup instead of an A minus.
I know.
I guess that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
Although, it was so interesting to me that in that episode, Al calms Marcy down and gets her to talk to her cousin,
Mm-hmm.
who thought that Marcy hated her for being a lesbian. Again, this makes no sense to me,
I
knowing
know.
this now about how he wasn't invited to this woman's wedding because he was being a crap hole about lesbians in real life.
And he's also on Modern Family, and Modern
Which
Family,
is
of course, famously has a gay couple on there. Uh-oh. Carla froze
Oh,
there.
oh no.
That's the expression. That's what
It's
we're talking about.
perfect. Yep.
Uh-oh. Well, hopefully we'll get Carla back. Carla? Oh, there you
There
are.
you
You, you froze perfectly,
was
though. I should have taken a screenshot because it was like you had the perfect expression.
It was a great face.
This is just me in general about so many things in life.
Yep.
And I do have to say, I was not expecting Carla to say that Jefferson was so attractive. I honestly was not expecting that.
I
That's
generally don't really like that, like all-American
yeah,
type
that
of
really
dude.
threw me.
The conventionally handsome. The kind that like everybody thinks is so cute. I like
That's
my
why
men
it
to be
threw me.
niche.
Yeah, that's why it
Niche
threw me.
handsome. Oh, by the way, I just want to throw out there that my son had to wear a suit on Friday, and then he came back and I asked him if he enjoyed being publicly handsome, and he said yes.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
Oh my God.
That's
It's so sweet.
adorable. Aw, that is so
I just love him
cute.
so much. I needed to say something.
That's so
Aw.
cute. Aw.
Little kids in suits and formal wear are just freaking
Yes!
adorable. Oh my
Oh
God.
my god! Oh,
That's
I love
cute.
him.
So, Jen, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jefferson is so how about Steve?
Well, I
You're
did
gonna
always
answer
think
by Steve. I'm kidding.
I did always think that Jefferson, he is the more conventionally handsome one. And I honestly kind of forgot about Steve until I was rewatching like years ago, but went back and rewatched like the earlier seasons. And I was like, "Oh, that's right." So, between Steve and Jefferson, what I like about Jefferson is that, yes, he's stupid. He's in it and he's married to Marcy strictly, I think, because she's going to take care of him. She's his sugar mama. And I think she's okay with that too, to a point. But I love that Jefferson is just so stupid and he gets pulled into all of whatever Al is going to do. Like they make a great dumb team and they're funny to watch. I always found Steve to be a bit more for lack of a better word, like challenging. And because I think because he's smarter, more intelligent, that he wasn't always going to be so easily duped into whatever schemes or shenanigans were on for that week. Not to say that he never did, but I think there was a bit more hesitation. Maybe he would ask a simple why. Al would give some shoestring because he's a shoe salesman, explanation, and that'd be good enough for Steve. Like, okay, that makes enough sense for now
Yeah.
to do something that sounds crazy and stupid and a little fun and maybe a little dangerous. So, Marcy, I don't know. I always kind of went back and forth with her because I did like how she antagonized Al. I did like their back and forth, and knowing that they didn't get along really kind of puts that whole kind of relationship of those characters into light, and maybe that's why it worked so well of them just
Mhm.
picking at each other. But I liked her, but she also drove me nuts, and I think maybe she's just kind of loud and maybe like controlling because yeah, she's trying to push Peg to do things that Peg's doesn't want to do. She has no interest in those things. But I guess maybe because she provided that little bit of a balance to the kookiness of the Bundys and all the wrongness of the Bundys. I think in a way I kind of remember her always trying to push a bit of like feminism onto Peg, like, women's rights and stand up for yourself. But I think Peg was exhibiting her own form of being an
Mhm.
independent woman and
Yep.
exercising her right to choose to not do anything. That was her choice as a house mom, and I
It's
love
true.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think
Mhm.
a lot of the time, people who are pro something forget that, if we're trying to fight for freedom of something, and particularly freedom of choice of something, it includes the choice that you wouldn't make.
Mhm.
And
Exactly. Yes.
so often you hear feminists who rail on housewives and stay-at-home mothers as if that's not a valid choice because it's not the choice that you are fighting for
Mhm.
yourself. Like,
Exactly.
Yep.
mm.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. I think Peg was more of a feminist than Marcy was.
Yeah. Yeah. And without even trying, it was so easy, and she's just so flawless at it, and
This
so,
is just
yeah,
the Peggy
Bundy
Bundy
show.
podcast,
I
Peggy
know.
Bundy Adoration Hour.
I know.
Well, she is the best. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I am on with the neighbors, I guess. It's just, yeah, the shenanigans of Al and Jefferson were fun to watch. The creation of No Ma'am and just the hilarious ridiculousness of that whole little group and everything. Like, oh, you poor men. But um yeah, and like I said, I grew up more with Jefferson. So Steve, I feel like I never really got to know. I spent more
Never
of my
really got
formative
to know.
years with Marcy Darcy and Jefferson Darcy, right? Because he
Jefferson Darcy, yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah. And then
Yep.
plus, he's all American. He's an alpha beta from Revenge of the Nerds too. Well, not too, but as well. So he's I don't know, he was just always kind of there. So I see him going from like this like asshole, like super toxic male frat boy douchebag to just kind of like a dummy, to a very handsome dummy. And I
Mhm.
I guess that was kind of fun to see at a young age and maybe yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to put it out there, what No Ma'am does stand for is the National Organization of Men Against Amazonian Masterhood. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
It's such a stretch to get to know ma'am, and they
I
just
know.
really wanted that.
I could just say no ma'am and not even have it stand
Right?
for anything. It's
What does it stand for? I don't know. But I like the shirt.
every time Al would say what it stood for, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. Yeah. Well, to me, Marcy represents a couple of things. First, I think when she first was on, especially with Steve, they represented very much Republicans and very much that Reagan era Republican and very much about greed and money is good and all that stuff and very conservative. Yet, she is the horniest character on this show. She is, I mean, oh my gosh, she is so out there. She's really gross. She's really such a hypocrite. She's so hypocritical. And and I also always remember her with the Barbies. Her obsession with Barbies was the weirdest flipping thing. And I remember the episode with Steve when she had her Barbie and Steve had gotten rid of it or had gotten sold somewhere. And so he's going out on they're going out in the mean streets of Chicago, him and Al, to find this Barbie and get this Barbie back. And when she finally got her Barbie back, when Marcy did, the way she treated this Barbie was bizarre. And then later on, they revisit the Barbie thing with Jefferson buying that Barbie at an auction and then realizing it's worth more because Al and Jefferson's big thing was always trying to get money, was always scheming to get more money, especially Jefferson. And so Jefferson's like, well, I'm going to go. She would sleep with this Barbie. So he's like, when she's sound asleep and replace it with something else, go get that. I just need Al. I just need you to stay in bed with Marcy all night. And he's like, I'll be back really soon, actually, is what he says first. And of course, it's all night. And you see Al just like he has to put his hand on her butt. He has to do all this stuff. There's one scene where he's in the bathroom puking because he's so disgusted that he had to spend the night in her bed, and it's just bizarre. So that relationship was just the relationship of Al and Marcy, they so despised each other. And that's why, it's, I think maybe some of that even came from the real life thing. But they actually worked really well off of each other. They're two very good actors. So it's sad to me in a lot of respects that they didn't get along. And and him always calling her a chicken and all the chicken jokes and all that kind of stuff was so weird. But then what Marcy became is Marcy then became that feminist that is only a feminist, like we said, in the way she wants to be a feminist. Like she's a feminist that she would not include people in sex workers. She would not include that in her feminism because that's not the way to be a feminist according to her. But at the same time, she's also such a capitalist and she's such a yuppie. So I just don't like her, but I think she was supposed to be a play on that. I think they were kind of attacking that. And I know a lot of people have said like that this family, like now they've said like that the Bundys would be huge supporters of like Republicans and Trump and all that stuff. And Al's like, they don't vote. They
don't vote.
No, Marcy would, but I don't think they would even.
I could see maybe Peg being a secret registered voter and
Yes.
not tell Al about it or
But
anybody.
I think she would vote for. She would have probably voted. She wouldn't have voted. I don't think she would have voted necessarily for like a Republican or something. But
No, I don't think if any of them voted, they're not party specific. They're going to
No.
vote for the candidate that they feel is going to allow them to either help them get rich quick or allow Peg to maintain her lazy lifestyle.
Yes.
And I think that's it. So I don't think they have any qualms about voting for a different party the next election, if they even vote. And I truly don't think any of them are registered.
I think that Kelly is registered, and I'll tell you why.
On accident?
I think that maybe somebody was setting them up at the school, and she thought that she was like signing up for like a getaway or something, and she was like, "Oh, this sounds great." Like they're like, "Oh, we'll take you to new places," and she's like, "Where? Sign me up." And she signs it, and she only ever gets the card, and they're like, "But you have to go to this building to use the card." And then she gets very excited, and she gets there, and she's like, "I'm in a line. I must be about to get on a plane or something." And then she gets to the booth, and she's like, "What is this thing?" And then just kind of bubbles down the middle.
Absolutely.
She thinks she has to take a test before she gets on the plane. And she wasn't expecting. She's like, oh no, I didn't get to study for this, but I'll just do my best. And then she thinks that she'll put the thing into the machine to scan it, and she's like, what did I win? And the answer is
a sticker.
A sticker. That's so, yeah. I voted. Look at this pretty sticker I got. Yes. That's so true. Yeah. And well, I mean, there is the one episode where Al gets very political because of the beer tax. So that just tells you everything you need to know. That's what he cared about, was the beer tax. It's not anything else. He just cared about that. So I don't see that. And then Steve was okay. I honestly, I don't know. I think I wasn't as big a fan of him. He was okay. I that's all I'll say about him. I really don't have too much to say about Steve, to be honest. But I thought the performance was good. I thought the acting was good. Jefferson, I love Jefferson, and Jefferson is horrible and awful, but I love Jefferson because to me, Jefferson is almost. I think they were trying to do a male version of Peggy. But what was interesting is Jefferson became more bonded to Al. And one thing I am so grateful for, because I think they so easily could have done this, and they kind of did it the first episode when Marcy realizes she's married Jefferson, and Jefferson thinks he married Kelly. And he's like, oh, yes, I scored. Oh, hot damn. And he's like, okay, come on. And Kelly's like, bye, daddy. It's like, okay, I'm going to go up with this guy. But what I really appreciate is, even though there was an episode later on where they were in commercials together and they were doing really well there, and everybody got upset when they were going to end up kissing, but they never were taking it seriously. But I appreciate that Jefferson never became this slimy guy who was lusting after Kelly all the time. And I really worried that was going to happen. And so I kind of appreciated they didn't go there with him. But I love him because he's just like, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want, and I'm going to take advantage of Marcy. Yet at the same time, he really loves having sex with her. So he's physically attracted to her, which really kind of surprises me. but he's kind of a male bimbo, I guess is the best way to kind of. He's a what was it? Don't they call it like himbos? Himbo, yeah, himbo. Um, but I like Jefferson a lot, and I think he added a lot to the show. And him and Al, their scenes together when they would do little adventures and schemes they would get into and schemes they get involved in were so wonderful. And I loved the episode just because I was also because I know Carla, you were into Supermarket Sweep too, but I love the episode where they do the supermarket run. And it's Peg and Al versus Jefferson and Marcy. And there's a scene where Marcy falls down and Peggy runs over her
Yeah.
with their cart. And then Jefferson's like, Marcy, where are you? And he runs her over too. And it's so funny. So yeah, I like Jefferson a lot. I think he added a great deal to the show.
I loved his $1,000,000 smile. He had a great
This.
smile.
I was not
He does.
expecting this. I'm really surprised by this, Carla.
She's all thrown off, I think.
So thrown off
The
by
guy's a
this.
freaking hunk.
He is
Like,
very attractive.
yes, he's very attractive. He has an amazing smile. I don't know what to tell you. I'm
Wow.
sorry to disappoint you.
No, it's not disappointing. I'm just surprised.
Just shocking.
It's just shocking. Yeah, it's not as I mean, he's no Jeff Winger. Still upset about that. I'm so mad about that.
Oh,
I'm mad at myself.
It's
But
understandable.
that reminds me that Britta from Community and Marcy are similar in that they're both the same kind of like fake feminists. They're the same fake, whatever they think they are. Because I think Marcy thinks that she's a liberal,
She
and
does.
she's very much not. She's very much like whatever party will do best for her or support her desires and needs the most.
Yep.
But she doesn't really care about people. She cares about herself. And same thing with Britta.
Very true. Very,
Mhm.
very true. Yep, very true there. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the general content of the show. Like we mentioned, there's a lot of fat phobia, homophobia, sexism, a little bit of racism in here, everything thrown in here. Very, as it was put at the time, very politically incorrect, is how people like to put it. But basically, they were horrible people. Everyone on this show was horrible. I mean, even the side characters for the most part. And of course, there was the long running thing that every time Al would get home from the shoe store, he would say, "So, a fat lady came into the shoe store today." So, I still have love for this. But so, Carla, what are your thoughts on the general content? Do you think it went too far? And do you think the show, the writers, I'm not talking about the people who watch the show, but do you think the show actually even liked its characters?
I think that the show understood what it was doing. I don't. I think that they liked the characters as far as they used them as kind of satirical mouthpieces. They. I don't think that they saw them as likable people at all. They went to great lengths to show you that these are not likable people. These are not good people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they were effective. So I think that the writers in that sense did like them. The Even back then, like all of the fat phobia and the fat shaming made me really uncomfortable. And I there were and even today, which is, still horrible, that a lot of people are just like, it's just a joke. Like, why can't you just accept that it's just funny, it's just for a laugh, without understanding that there's damage done to real people who are hearing themselves as the butts of jokes. I wonder what it was like for those actresses playing those women in the shoe store to be the butt of these jokes constantly. It's I can't imagine what that does to somebody's psyche to be like, okay, you're being brought on the show specifically so that Al Bundy can make fun of you for being fat. So I like that doesn't sit well, it doesn't play well. Um, that's one of the aspects in which it goes too far. because I think you could have made the point that Al Bundy is an awful human being without leaning into the fat shaming. Um, Also, just so you know, like, you guys are frozen for me, so if at any point you want to interrupt me and say something, you might have to, like, I don't know.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you every now and then.
Oh, oh,
Sometimes,
oh
like, I could hear you
no.
just then, so that helps.
Okay, well
But
maybe
I'm gonna
I'll.
keep talking because I can't always hear you. You can
Okay.
tell me how hilarious I am once my internet works. Okay. Now, as far as the rest of the show, it definitely was not a great show for women and for feminism as much as, like we've said, Peggy and Kelly were feminist ideals in some ways. In other ways, they, definitely weren't. Aw, thank you, Aaron. Um, Thank you for stroking my ego. I love that so much. Um, but definitely, like, the portrayals of women in general, like the parade of hot women that are just there to be ogled, and the way that Bundy and Al treat women, the way that Marcy gets put down for being short, for being flat chested, for having the haircut that she does, for looking like a lesbian, like, just so many things are just awful. As far as race, like, the show doesn't lean too far into racism in an exceptional way. Not saying that it doesn't, but just not
Yeah.
in a way that is exceptional to its era. And the show's rampant with homophobia. Like, there's just no two ways about it. It is rampant with homophobia. Now, the show itself, like, I think if Married with Children had failed, I don't think that we would have had The Simpsons, Roseanne, or so many other shows that
No.
rely on this kind of comedy where it's supposed to be satirical and you're supposed to take it as satirical. But I think that not to say that there aren't enough people who are smart enough to understand satire versus just a straight up, like, this is what we think is funny. But yeah, because there are so many people who talk about shows and about some characters as if, like, oh well, I always thought that this was a great character because it shows what a man really should be, and it shows what a woman's place should be. And it's like, dude, that's not the point that they're trying to get across. But again, I think that there are so many shows that would have failed or not even been brought to life if the show had failed. And it debuted at a time when The Cosby Show and Family Ties, Who's the Boss, etc., were going really strong. And it was specifically built as a counterpoint to that. Fox back then uh, was the risk taking network, and is the network that would bring you all of these big splashy things, and they really went out of their way to create not controversy, but a spark. And the big three back then, NBC, ABC, and CBS, were very, I mean, they had been established like decades prior, and their fare was just so standard and stale that Fox, at this point, it was a big risk, and it paid off because it was a big risk. But so yeah, so like, all of these shows had happy families facing happy family problems together with their nice big houses and consistent flow of food and, like, toilet paper or what have you. But the big trick that Married with Children managed to pull was that this family is awful, just completely unrepentantly awful. They're loyal only to each other and only when it's convenient to them. And they have to to verbally remind you that they love each other, because otherwise it's hard to tell that they do. None of the characters have redeemable qualities, and yet even as the characters become more caricature, the show's success grows, and the less believable these people were as people, the more beloved they became. And I think that's a good thing. I think that if they were believable as people, as some shows now try to do, where they try to have like these complex heroes or anti-heroes or whatever, because then you're really muddling the line with a viewership that is not necessarily prepared to properly digest that kind of high level presentation. And it was counter to successful family sitcoms and just sitcoms in general. because nobody's likable, and the show goes out of its way to be offensive, but it also strips back the veneer of perfection that was just ham-fistedly present in sitcoms and the depictions of middle-class nuclear families. And they don't just openly bicker, they actively work to antagonize and sabotage each other. They lose a lot of opportunities to meet their goals just to make sure somebody else in the family doesn't get what they want. And yet, with all of that, it succeeds tremendously because of the production itself. The actors, no matter what they're saying, are showing you that they're in on the joke, that they get that it's a satire, and that's how they're presenting it to you. They're fully aware that they're playing awful people, saying awful things to each other, behaving awfully, but they're doing it with such conviction and gusto that I think most people really get the point that this is not a family to aspire to be. These are not people that you want to grow up to be, other than, like we've said before with Kelly and with Peggy, their confidence. But I don't know. I think that for all of the bad things about the show, there were many great things that came of it, and I'm glad that we're able to discuss it and to really get into why it works and um, how you should view it, and the takeaways that were there to be taken away.
Well, applause if you can hear me. If not, I will
Wonderfully
write
said.
applause in there because that was wonderfully said. So I'm writing that in here.
Thank you.
Oh, you did hear that. Okay, good. So yes.
It sounded like good. Say it. I think it's good to Carla.
So Jen, do you
Oh, I love when the three of us are together because I go after Carla and it makes my life that much easier. I don't know what else I could add to that. It was so well said, perfectly said. Did they go too far? Absolutely. Did it maybe at that time period envelopes needed to be pushed? Yes. um with the isms that they relied on, or not even, as Carla had said, it wasn't like exceptionally racist for its time, so it was about what you would expect for that time period, which that is what it is. We'll just go with that for now. So but I think that, I guess, in a way, in some ways, I kind of see it similar to like South Park in the sense that nobody is safe from being skewed by the writers and the actors portraying these, because I think, yeah, the actors were in on the joke. They knew that these are terrible people, not to aspire to be like them at all. And they did such a great job putting that on screen and giving that to us. Now, it's unfortunate that some folks probably viewed it and was like, "Yeah, yeah, this family, they get it." It's not to be taken as like a guide to life or anything, or to how to raise a family or be a person. So, I think as long as you remember that, even watching it now, that at the time we really needed something like this, and had it not succeeded, we wouldn't have had these other forms of dysfunctional
Mhm.
families that still love each other and will still be there, because I feel like we see a lot more of that now than happy, everything wrapped up neat in a bow, all that kind of just really positive family stuff. You know what I mean?
No, I do.
So I like that here we're given this like really rough, kind of, I don't know, like pokey seed, and over time it's planted, it's regrown and germinated and repopulated, and we've gotten these different kind of variations of this plant, and how we've kind of learned to cultivate and trim and work with the thorny bits, and how to make them less thorny but still there. Does any of that make sense? I don't know why I went
No, it
into a
does.
plant analogy. That was kind of weird, but that's just kind of how.
It's basically saying that every rose has its thorn.
Yes, it does. Every rose, yes. So
Everyone.
that's I guess all I'm gonna add to what Carla has already beautifully said. So
Yeah. What Carla said was pretty perfect and right on, and not much to add. I mean, I do think that a lot of people that watch this show didn't realize. I think some people didn't realize that this show wasn't saying you should be like these people. The show was very much saying you should not be like these people because they never won. I think that was very, very important. The Bundys did not win, especially Al. And so the fact that you had these characters not winning, I think really sends the message that you should not be this awful. But I think
Mhm.
they were also skewering the fact that so many families were supposed to be so quote unquote perfect. They were also a takeoff on the Marcy Darcy is a takeoff on the creators of the Cosby Show and all of those too. For so they were definitely pushing back against that. And like it's already been said, you would not have certain shows like we're going to be talking about Always Sunny next week, and you would not have that show if this show had not happened. It just never ever. It paved the way. And while I think a lot of especially the fat phobia, I think is the hardest one in this to at all come to terms with. And like you said, Carla, I can't even imagine being one of those actresses
Mhm.
and the mental exhaustion that must have been to the toll that must have taken to be basically like a sideshow character kind of thing. Like
And
basically you
even
were not a human being. You were
and even
just
how
all that
they
your weight.
dressed, yeah, and even how they sorry to interrupt, even how they dressed the larger women. They dressed them
Yes.
in like the muumuus, very like and also, yeah, the joke of like, oh, fat woman came into the shoe store. Like,
Yeah.
so attractive thin people don't buy shoes. It's only like why how is
Weird.
that a joke? You know what I mean? Like that's just
Mhm.
a weird
Yeah,
statement.
and also like if the joke is that women try to cram their feet into shoes that don't fit them, people of every size, of body size, do that. Like
Yes.
I was refusing to believe that I was bigger than a size 10.5 for years. That's before I even packed on weight. Like it's not exclusively a fat person thing. It's a
Mhm.
Yeah. No,
Everybody.
it's very true. Yeah, I mean, men have their whole size issues too. I mean, hello. So yeah, I mean, and also that their whole identity was wrapped up in food. I mean, you had the running gag with Peggy's mom.
Oh,
And
yeah.
when Peggy's mom was staying there for a while, and every time she'd move, she'd be like shaking the house and that kind of stuff. It's just gross. It's disgusting. And well, it went to such an extreme that I know people make the argument, well, they didn't really believe this stuff. But at the same time, that's very degrading. And to hear that, especially, like we all watched this when we were young. And so when you're watching this when you're young, it really does imprint on you that fat is bad. It
Mhm.
really did that. I mean, that was a negative aspect of watching this show. And especially when you're watching it with a parent or your parents, and if they're laughing at that, then that also instills in you that, oh, so this is bad, so so even though it is a comedy, like I said when we did our community episode, I think a lot of times comedies like this like to hide behind the fact that they're a comedy, so they're like that, so that excuses anything they do, but it doesn't. You can still be responsible in your comedy.
Mhm.
So even though I
especially
still
satires.
what?
Especially satires. They think that they're so
Yeah.
smart that they can get away with this stuff because it's like it's a satire though. It's okay.
Right, it's just be better at your job. Be a better
Yeah.
writer, be a better joke teller, be
Don't be
funnier.
lazy. Don't be
Don't be
lazy.
lazy. Exactly, 1980, 80s, 90s, the fat jokes were rampant,
Mhm.
your mama jokes, your mama's so fat this and that, and I remember, I think, like, on In Living Color, Ed
Yeah.
O'Neill showed up as kind of a Bundy-esque because he was in the armchair, and he won the your mama, uh, I don't know, beef off riff, I don't what are words? That little bit, he won against, I think it was Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun, but it's just those jokes were so widely told and widely accepted, and and it's like I have, fat people in my family, and I think they over time have become conditioned to be the first one to make that joke, in that attempt to diffuse and
Mhm.
be like, haha. But I really don't know how it truly makes them feel to make those fat jokes, even to be the first one to do it
Yeah.
before someone else gets to. And it's like, I'm really sorry that life did that to you. And I'm sorry that, society and your family played a role in that as well. But
Mhm.
that's and to not excuse it, but that's how it was. It's I
Yeah.
we know better. Hopefully going forward, we do a little better.
A little.
Marvel,
This
Marvel.
is yeah.
Yeah.
This is one area that's not this is one area that's not that much better. Honestly, the fat phobia is not that much better. I
I
think
feel like
go ahead.
just that I feel like the three of us know better, but like the people out there writing stuff still have to be reminded and shamed into remembering, hey, these are still people, and
Mhm.
fatness is not a joke. People's bodies are not a joke, no matter what you're making fun of them for, whether it's, disability, race, body shape. There's nothing to make fun of in the way people present themselves, and that's part of why when certain politicians were being mocked on on TV shows and on Twitter and just social media, and so often it's like a thing about like, oh, it's because he's funny because he looks like this. It's like, let's make fun of him because he looks like because he's fat or because he's balding or because X, Y, and Z. None of those things are funny, and you're also making your friends who are any of those things
Yeah.
see you for who you really are.
Mhm.
Like, think about how this affects people outside of people you're trying to mock. These people are mockable for endless reasons that have nothing to do with what they look like or their abilities. Like, put a little bit more thought into why you think you're being funny.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I always
Yeah, exactly.
when people would even like mock even like Trump and his
Yeah.
body and his weight and his posture, I'm just like, low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
folks. Like he's so terrible for so many other reasons.
Well, and
Let's
then making fun of with him being like in love with Putin and all this stuff and like making all the
Homophobic.
yeah, very homophobic jokes
Mhm.
and from people that are like I am so not homophobic. I'm like you're being homophobic.
it's like,
Like
well, it's
homophobic
him.
jokes. Yeah, I know.
Mhm.
It's like, accept the fact that you have some work to do within your mind, and recalibrate
Yeah.
before hitting back and saying it's just a joke. Like, you
Mhm.
you don't have a sense of
Mhm.
humor. It's like, clearly you're the one who doesn't.
Or at least admit that you're just gonna go low and not give a shit. At least admit that, because at least I think there is a little bit of, like, respect there. It's like, at least you're not bullshitting me. At least you're gonna let me know that you're gonna be terrible on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
That's
Just
fine.
own it and move on so I can block you. Like, just
Yes.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the show. I think it's good to always critique this media, like I've said, even if you love stuff, it's
Mhm.
good to critique it because then hopefully people will do better. So we're going to move on to our new segment, 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock. And I know Jen is playing. I know Carla's not playing, but like I said, you don't have to play. You can't play. This one was a fun one to do. Honestly, I enjoyed doing this one. And we are eventually going to have an intro for this. Erin and I are brainstorming on a way to introduce this segment because I feel like it needs an introduction.
it's
Ooh.
an intro song.
Yeah.
Yes, Carla, will you do an intro song for us?
Yeah.
Oh! See,
Okay.
now I want an intro for my 6 Degrees of Nicolas Cage.
Will you do that for her?
Too,
Yeah.
Jen.
I mean, we're
Yes.
podcast brain twins, so it's like you're really doing it for the same
You
person.
need to, like, like twins often have some outfits growing up. Now you guys can have, say, similar jingles.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we both do 6 degrees. So, yes. So, Jen, I'll be very curious to see if it's one of mine that you came up with. So, what are your 6 degrees of Finn?
All right. Well, I've got the one because I kind of almost forgot, and so I panicked, but I got it, and I got there, and okay, well, here we go. So, Married with Children stars Katie Sagal. We love her. She was in a few episodes of Lost with Emily DeRaven, Emily DeRaven,
Mhm.
who was in The Submarine Kid with Finn Wittrock.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Everybody keeps it, which is a great movie.
Yes.
Great movie. And Finn co-wrote that movie, and that's one of his best performances. He's so flippin' good in that movie.
I really liked that movie.
Yeah.
That was
A
a good
trigger
one.
warning for that movie. It's very heavily deals with PTSD and suicidal ideation. So, but it's so good. So, yeah. Well, I have several here. So let's see, which one do I want to use here? I'll use the Ed O'Neill one because it's actually
Oh.
more steps than the other ones. But so Ed O'Neill was in Modern Family with Eric Stone Street, who was in American Horror Story Murder
I
House.
knew you were going there.
With Evan Peters, who was in American Horror Story Freak Show with Finn and other things too with Finn. But I do want to throw out another Katie Sagal connection, which Katie Sagal guest starred on The Big Bang Theory with Jim Parsons, who was in The Normal Heart with Finn. And then the last one, I'm just going to throw this out too. Christina Applegate was in the movie Bad Moms with Mila Kunis, who just made a movie with Finn called Luckiest Girl Alive that is set to release this year. I'm sure we will be talking about this movie, doing something about this movie, because this is our Vice unofficial mascot. So if Christian fucking Bale ever lets us down, which he never will,
I just love that the title always includes unofficial mascot to the point where it's Vice unofficial mascot Finn Wittrock.
We haven't gotten the clearance from Finn yet, but
I just love that.
So Finn, if you want to give the clearance that you're our official Vice mascot, go.
Oh.
So yes, and then a reminder to listeners that you can play our own audience version of 6 Degrees of Finn, where we are going to be selecting every month. We're going to be doing this every month. We're going to select previous shows or movies that we have covered, and then you just submit how Finn is connected to them. We're going to choose 4 each month. This month, they're Dexter, Chuck, True Blood, and Schitt's Creek. So I will once again give you a hint that at least one of these is super duper easy to connect. I may be making these harder in the future, but who knows? But anyway, so head on over. If you're watching this live, you're watching on YouTube, here's the link. Head on over there for a chance to win some It's a Findom Thing merch. So, hey, it's free to enter. Anyone can enter. So play along. You have until May 31st. And then the first week of June, I will announce the winner. I've liked some of the connections that have come through because it's introduced me to things I didn't even know. So there are actually bigger Finn Wittrock fans out there than me. It's amazing.
What?
Who must we petition to?
It's Finn entering himself every time. He's like, I want some merch. I don't want to buy it myself because I'll feel weird about that.
Yes, winning it is so much more dignified.
Yeah.
He'll use a code name.
Man, Wattstone.
Yeah, he could listen to any of our previous episodes and come up with a different name for himself. So, but I'm enjoying this. So I'm glad it's a new segment. I can't wait for Carla's song. It's gonna be amazing. I just know it.
Of course it is. Of course
Yes.
it is.
And I can't wait to hear the one she comes up with for Jen, my podcast brain
Yeah.
twin. So thank you both so much. It was great to have the Wild Women of Podcasting back together again. We definitely didn't do this again because I miss it so dang much. So I loved having both of you on. You are 2 of my favorite people in the world. So thank you both so much. Love you. Okay, so now I'm just going to go around and have everybody say where their podcasts can be found in themselves too. So Carla.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Meg and I co-host a podcast called. Wait, I was gonna say it's a fandom thing, but that's not the one. I only semi-regularly co-host this one. No, we co-host Bedwet or Behead podcast, which you can find on any podcast streaming service that's worth your time. If it doesn't have our podcast, delete it. It's clearly trash.
Pandora.
You can find us on Twitter at uh, Bedwet Behead Pod, on Instagram at bed.wet.behead.pod, on Blue social media that should probably no longer exist, but somehow still hangs on. Just look for Bedwet or Behead Podcast. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Carlatemis, and my website, carlatemis.com. That's CARLATEMIS.
Awesome. Thank you.
Interpretive dance.
Yeah. I love that. Maybe for like a video promo, we should all do like our own little interpretive dance to like our closing or,
That's amazing. Yeah. You should add that when you do the song for the 6 degrees.
Yes.
From a TikTok trend of like the Finn Whitrock, the success of Finn.
Oh my God. It should be a dance of the Finn Whitrock. If the Finn Whitrock is a dance, what would it be? We gotta do this.
Yes, this is a new thing. Okay.
You gotta throw in a little Dandy Mott first. Oops, I keep running into things. The flexing.
I am the new god. I am a god. Yes, we are gonna get this trending. Do the Finn Whitrock.
The Whitrock.
And then Finn, you have to submit your own.
Yeah.
We did watch your lovely, wonderful, amazing video this morning. Oh my god. That was hilarious.
Oh,
your dog did look like Fergie does when I try and sing or dance around her. Like, get me the hell out of here.
Sing something from a horror movie.
Oh.
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's what I will have to start doing. I'll just do the Friday the 13th thing and we'll go. And she'll be like, oh my god, this is amazing. Murder.
Instead of popcorn, she'll bring a doggy bone to chew on.
Yeah.
Or a human bone. Or a bone from a bunny. She wants to kill the bunny. I was really sorry, and then I'll let you close out, Jen. Sorry. So I was watching.
This is payback for Cycle Beach Party.
Yes, it's payback.
Tomorrow, y'all will understand that reference.
So I was watching American Horror Story Freak Show before this, and it's the episode, the first one where Dandy Mott is bathing in the blood. Because it helps, it's good for the pores. So he's bathing in blood of, I think it's his mom at that time that he just murdered. And it's okay. His mom is horrible. It's okay. And then he goes and murders a Tupperware.
The previous one. So I'm just a little.
So I was joking that we were joking that Fergie's going to go and kill a bunch of bunnies and bathe in their blood. Totally normal Carla's face.
My face is, this is all good.
Okay. Anyway, so Jen.
Awesome. I love that. Your dog's so cool.
Fergie is she's such an interesting character. She does really. This is seriously, listeners. She loves watching horror movies. She loves watching people getting murdered. When I was rewatching Nip Tuck, she was so enthralled every time they would do the surgeries. Her eyes were glued to the screen. She was the only one enjoying that rewatch. So, Jen, where can they find you in your podcast?
Well, they can, so the podcast can be found on like almost any podcast player near you, pretty much everywhere but Pandora. That is my corporate beef that I've got. I'm going to roll with that for a while because why not? It's hilarious. Uh, and oh, side note, when I went to go check last week after Aaron, you and I got done recording Psycho Beach Party, my submission was gone. And so I resubmitted and
Aw.
I'm like, you sons of bitches. But so that's my corporate beef is with Pandora. But otherwise, yeah, you can find me Podbean, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all the other places. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Streaming Bubble and can be found on Facebook and Instagram as My Streaming Bubble. So, and I've got, oh yeah, because we're live now, but not when this episode airs, that I do have an episode coming out on Sunday with Aaron, and we talked about the amazing movie Psycho Beach Party, one of my favorites. So I love it. I'm really excited for that to drop in the morning.
Yeah, that was so much fun. Yes. And it breaks my heart to say to Jen that I am on Pandora.
It doesn't break your heart. I know it doesn't. It's fine.
And it's like,
That sounds more like a brag.
it's the number 3 most popular place that people listen to us.
I feel bad, but listen to my amazing statistics.
I feel awful, but I'm on there, so hey.
I feel so sad for all the podcasters who can't get on it.
But I'm on there. Sucks to be you, but sometimes life is hard.
Oh my
Pandora, who needs it?
Pandora, I hardly know her.
Pandora, if you're listening, I love you. I love you. Do not kick me out.
That's probably why Pandora lost my submission is because they're like, oh, you're talking shit. Got it.
It's lost as in lost.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this is Erin. You can follow me at eAprilBeauty. The E and the A and the B are capitalized. Be sure to like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/itsafandom-thing-pod. On Twitter at fandomthingpod. No, it's in that one. On Instagram at It's a Fandom Thing Pod, on TikTok at It's a Fandom Thing Pod, and look for our upcoming Finn Whitrock dancing challenge. This man is going to become so annoyed with this podcast because he knows about this podcast. So he's either going to become really annoyed with it or become enamored with us. I choose enamored.
Obviously.
Obviously. So into it.
So look for that trend sometime. We're gonna do it. We're gonna come up with the Finn Whitrock.
Yeah.
Do the Finn Whitrock.
Yes.
Do the Finn Whitrock. I'm trying to come up with
the chicken dance.
You have to do the hair. The hair. Okay. So look for that coming soon. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you'd like to come on and do the Finn Whitrock.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, do it live. You can bring your
live
doggy.
stream yourself.
Yeah, bring your doggy. Have your dog do the Finn Whitrock.
Oh,
I'm gonna have Fergie do a Finn Whitrock dance. Anyway,
just put her in a clown hat. Party clown hat. Again, showing my 2 references I know of this man. Not after him, but this is all I know. That and he was once in a room with Ben Affleck that had snails.
Oh God, that goddamn snails.
Season 11 American Horror Story.
Yep.
Anyway, you can also pick up It's a Snail Thing in our
Amazing
You seriously can,
segue.
listeners. You seriously can.
Yes, it's very true. So, show your snail love. Anyway, so if you want to be on the show and do your Finn Whitrock dance, reach out to us via our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com, or you can email. I love it. They're doing their Finn Whitrock. It's a fandomthingpod. Oh, God.
Carla's really good at it.
She is. Your Finn Whitrock dance is amazing.
What can I say?
It's like
Just
he's
got it.
here.
Oh,
We love you.
I just imagine
I acknowledge
Carla
your
doing.
existence, sir.
I just imagine Carla doing like her best Finn now for Vice unofficial mascot.
On our next year when we do the Big Short, because both of our mascots are in the Big Short, so you'll your Finn and your Christian.
Yes, that will totally happen, because I can definitely talk like a generically accented white person in the United States. So that's easy peasy. I'm doing it now. Hello, Erin. I am a generic white person in the United States. I am so excited to speak to you today. May I interest you in some corn or soybeans?
Corn and soybeans. You lost. You had me at soybeans.
That was amazing. Can't wait to tag some generic white boy in this. I love us.
Oh my god!
See, why wouldn't you want to come on this show? I mean, seriously.
Honestly, we're a good time.
We are. We're the wild women of podcasting.
Yes.
It's in the name. Fun is just. It's all there implied.
Yes. Yes. You can't spell
Damn it.
fun. You can't spell fun without the wild women of podcasting.
Sure. Yep. I know. I said.
Actually, I don't know that you can spell fun.
There's only an N.
No, there's an F though. Wild women of podcasting. Is
Oh,
there
yeah.
Okay, well, it's
yes.
scrolling across right now, so
Or there's a U.
we don't have
There's
a
no,
U.
there's no U.
Okay, anyway, I guess we should wrap this up here.
You put the U in fun.
Ah.
I put the yes. So if you come on, I will provide that.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Love it.
Whew, that was my cardio for today.
Okay, well, you can email the show at it's a fandomthingpod@gmail.com. There, I got it out. And on our next live stream, we will be talking about Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That will be next Sunday at 6:30 East. I think it's 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. I can't remember now. But we're going to have Lauren and Rachel from Sort of Brilliant Podcast, which is the Harry Potter podcast. I don't understand Harry Potter. They're going to be on here. And little preview, I will be on their podcast in August sorting Finn Whitrock characters from, I'll be sorting Dandy, Tristan, and Harry. So,
Oh.
I just want to say on their behalf that they are not, they don't have anything to do with
Yes.
the creator of Harry Potter. They
Yes.
just take the houses and improve on them and sort characters into the houses.
yes,
And-
they
and-
do not support J.K. Rowling. Yes.
And from what I've gathered, Carla is a Ravenclaw and Meg's always wrong. From listening to a couple episodes. So I don't know anything about Harry Potter. Their podcast actually kind of helps me get a better idea of the houses, but I'm still just as wrong as Meg.
Yeah,
So
I
probably
do.
Gryffindor.
I can't remember because I think I've gotten like Gryffindor or Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw or all of those. I've taken my own tests
Ask
before.
them, but I'm pretty sure you're a Hufflepuff.
No, they
Hufflepuff.
said, I think that's what they said, or they said, I can't remember because I did ask them when they were on the 12-hour streaming event, but now I can't remember what they said. But yes, so they will be on along with Judy. So that'll be a fun conversation. And then on our next podcast episode, we already recorded this. We are talking about How I Met Your Mother. I warn people when the episode starts, Megan and I are extremely critical of this show. So if you still love this show, and if you love Ted especially, you do not want to listen to it. We hate Ted with a burning passion. We don't have anything nice to say about him. We despise this character. So if you like Ted, you are not going to want to listen to this episode.
Or
Way
maybe
to
listen
sell
to
it.
and learn some standards.
Mhm.
And I will excuse anything that Jason Segel does is another thing you will learn. And I'm not a big Neil Patrick Harris fan, so I apologize. I am not a fan of this show, but I warn you, so you know what you're getting into. So okay, well, yep. So yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
we're really
So
good at
until
ending.
next time, I know it's the Wild Women of Podcasting.
Check you later.
Have fun. Check you later. Yeah. So until next time, remember it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter and stop Asian hate. And thank you to anyone who watches this later. Submit your Finn Whitrock dances to us. I really want this to happen. I really want this to become a trend. Mainly just because I want to see what people submit.
Oh, absolutely.
We are going to do this. This will be the new trend. Watch out, people.
That sounded more like a threat, but okay.
I know. Like a threat. But thank you. And thank you again to my lovely Carla and Jen. Love you all. And good night, everybody.
Bye.